Hello, everyone. This is Raul Ramirez of Kungfukulture, where basically we want you to edify your mind and make savage your body from that classic quote from actually, it is from Mao Zedong. So, talking about where you want to learn as much as you can so that you can uh, win the intellectual battle and then also train really hard so that you can win the physical battle too. And actually, there's a famous quote in the book that we're going over, Art of War, that later you'll see it all around where it's like the whole well if it the way it's written in classical Chinese is it's really poetic where it's like if in times of peace more sweat flows, in times of battle less blood flows, right? So yeah, that's what we're kind of going over. Not we're not going to go over that section today, but we're going to go over chapter 2 of The Art of War by Sunzi. So I just want to let you know I didn't study Art of War specifically. I do have a PhD where I ended up translating a lot of classical Chinese texts, but those were medical texts. And but the thing is, they're thousands of years old, just like Art of War, and some of the philosophy and some of the terminology is shared since it was like the overall philosophy of the time period. So those permeate through all the different texts. So I'm just more of an expert on the medical, classical Chinese stuff. So if need be, I'll kind of like interject something or like I'll add something if I think it'll make the understanding a little bit better. But overall, I think the translation is pretty right on, or it's good enough, because you basically have to understand the overall philosophy behind it, and you'll be fine, right? So, before we get into that, though, I just want to let you know we're working on our website. We do have one online course that we had it on our catch wrestling site, so catchwrestlingalliance.com, and we're just going to migrate it over. Well, we'll just have another version. It's all the Sanda takedowns as well as a lot of the catch wrestling follow throughs, because there's a lot of similarities between the takedowns of Sanda and the takedowns of catch wrestling. So we have a course where you go over how to catch like all the different kicks in a Sanda way, and you can follow through in a catch wrestling way. So that's going to be up probably in the next day or so on our Kungfukulture website, and it'll be, since it's going to be our first course and it's kind of a little bit of an older course, we're going to give a discount on it. So keep an eye out for that. Should be probably have it up by like tomorrow afternoon, right? So it'd be much appreciated if you can support this channel. Also, we'll probably, yeah, we don't even have like memberships or anything set up on the Kungfukulture YouTube channel, but yeah, any if you can support us at our by learning, because we definitely have a lot to show, and um, don't let the UCLA students be the only ones who get it. And with that being said, also pretty soon in the next couple weeks, actually the end of September, we'll be back teaching at UCLA. So this time we'll be teaching, of course, catch wrestling, Sanda, uh, boxing, and I will also be teaching brand new this time Chinese traditional wrestling, so the jacket wrestling. So I was trying to show a little bit more of our students competing. So I had a group of my students, and I gave them a crash course in traditional Chinese wrestling, and they went to the Shuaijiao, or traditional Chinese wrestling tournament in San Jose, California, a few years ago, and they really did well. Everybody got medals, and just with the few, well, they were my catch wrestling students. So then when I showed them how to manipulate the jacket and all that of traditional Chinese wrestling, they did very well. So I just want to let you know I'll be also teaching that at UCLA coming up. So if you're a UCLA student, take advantage. or if you have some access to the gym, the John Wooden Center there, take advantage because it's a really cool, fun sport. So if you don't want to do like a lot of the like jujitsu or wrestling stuff, uh, you can do the traditional Chinese wrestling. It's totally fine. It's really fun as well. So, um, see if you can get in the class. Right? All right. So, chapter 2 of Art of War. Okay, feel free to comment anytime, and then I'll get to your comments later. Well, as soon as possible. But because basically this book is very very short. I just happen to have the book that I'm holding actually it just looks big, right? So the pages are thick. It's like a paper folded in half and stuff. So the book isn't that long, and especially the way classical Chinese was written. This is really short, but let's go ahead and go over it. Okay, so waging war, and one of the things is I want you to learn about. Actually, let me just read it, and we'll get to it later. Okay. As for military operations, let us consider an army of 1,000 attack chariots, 1,000 heavy chariots, and 100,000 armored troops, all provisioned for a campaign of 1,000 li, or like you can consider that like what kilometer, or just think of some distance, right? Allowing for expenses at headquarters and at the front, the entertainment of allies and guests, the cost of glue and lacquer for maintenance, and the manufacture of chariots and armor. An army of 100,000 men will require a daily expenditure of 1,000 jin. So in this case, so the guy didn't translate it. The translator didn't translate jin or li because we just have like a rough estimate of li being. Just think of it as a. I think nowadays, I know it's not the equivalent of a kilometer, but just think how say if you're in the United States, it'll be like so many miles, or if you're not in the United States, you'll be like, oh, that's several kilometers or whatever. So just think of it as a long distance. Also, Gene right here, Gene will be like metal or whatever, but money. Just think of it as you're spending a lot of money, right? So if you want to have a battle, just know it's going to be a great expense because you got to look at all the logistics of it. You got not only people, you got equipment, you have to travel, you have to take care of the equipment because things require maintenance like constantly. So you got to be thinking of all these things, and all this stuff costs money. It's not like army is free or whatever. Uh, so that was the first paragraph. Let's get to the next one. Okay, so in waging war, victory is the prize, but if it is delayed, both troops and weapons are blunted. Besieging a city exhausts your strength. A protracted campaign depletes the state's resources. With your soldiers and weapons dull, strength and resources spent, your rivals will seize their chance and rise up against you. Then, no matter how wise you are, you can turn nothing to your advantage. Okay, so this is one of the main points of this whole chapter, right? So if you want to wage a war, you have to consider like all the expenses, all the people, all the maintenance stuff. And the other thing you have to consider is time, right? And if you want to battle somebody and you know that it's probably going to take a lot of time to like defeat them, you probably don't want to do it, right? But anyways, he goes on. Okay. Thus, although I have heard of reckless haste in war, I have never seen wise delay, nor has any state benefited from prolonging war. Only someone who understands the perils of waging war can also understand the best way of conducting it. All right. So he just kind of like emphatically reinforces that idea where it's like, look, um, like, although I've heard of reckless haste in war. So basically, it's like you can rush into war, it's reckless, right? But if there's a battle to be had, and if you know that you can win quickly, like you definitively know that you can win quickly, then you must act because uh, uh, there's no benefit to prolonged war, prolonged battle, right? And then he kind of, and this is a thing that you'll commonly see even in the Chinese medical texts, where they talk about like the smarter person will do this, and the middle person will do this, and the low level person will do this. So he ends it with that, where it's like uh, only someone who understands the perils of waging war can also understand the best way of conducting it. Right. So you got to be thinking of all these aspects. So it starts off with the whole thing about the cost, right? And then the time, right? So uh, a superior intellect will have all these things taken into consideration. All right. So we only have only 3 paragraphs left. Like like all these chapters are really short. So hopefully these are as interesting to you as they are to me. Okay, so next paragraph. A skilled general levies troops only once and transports provisions from home only twice. He brings equipment from home, but forages for food from the enemy. This is how he keeps his troops fed. Provisioning an army at a distance is a sure way of emptying the state exeter. I told basically, I don't know how to pronounce this word, but the bank, emptying the coffers, right, and beggaring the populace. Prices are inflated by the presence of an army, and inflation swallows up the people's money so that tolls and taxes become oppressive. With strength sapped and wealth depleted, households are stripped bare, and the people will lose 70% of their income. As for public finances, broken chariots and broken down horses, restocking of weapons, shields, and armor, uh, the oxen for transport wagons, all these will account for 60% of the state fund, right? The state coffers, right? So um, the point of that paragraph is like you gotta find ways. So if you are going to wage war, you can't make it a huge expense from your state or like your government or your group or whatever. You have to find ways to not only cut down the cost, but be resourceful in the areas that you're going into to wage your campaign or wage your war, right? Because otherwise it will be at a great expense to your people, right? So not just the military people, the soldiers, but the everyday person back at home, because you're going to run out of money, and then you're going to want to tax them and do all kinds of other fees that will become oppressive if this goes on for too long. All right, 2 more paragraphs left. Okay. So it is for these reasons that a wise general forages food from the enemy. 1 zhong of the enemy's food is worth 20 zhong of your own. 1 dan of the enemy's supplies is worth 20 dan of your own. For your soldiers, anger must be the spur to killing the enemy, and reward must be the stimulus to defeating them. Thus, in a chariot battle, if 10 chariots or more are taken, then reward the soldiers who capture the first one. Change the flags and the standards of the captured chariots and add them to your own squadrons. Treat the captured soldiers well and look after them. This is the tactic of using the defeated enemy to increase your strength. All right. So the author didn't translate a couple words, but basically they meant just like uh, like a measurement, right? So that was, and then so if you want to know in particular, he does put it in the footnotes, right? The zhong of like 1 zhong of enemy's food is worth 20 zhong of your own. So one is equivalent to about 40 liters or 8.8 gallons. And then the other one is 1 dan of the enemy's supplies is worth 20 dan of your own. So 1 dan would be the equivalent of 50 kilograms or 110.2 pounds. All right. So be resourceful. Like if you can reuse what you've captured, and try to uh, treat the people who you've captured well. Maybe they'll fight for you. All right. Okay. Last paragraph. This is actually really short. This next one is really short. So you can now see that in war, it is winning alone that matters, and there is no merit in prolonging a campaign. A general who truly understands warfare controls the people's fate. He is the master of the state's security. Yeah, 国家, and okay, the state's security. Okay, so again, so at least according to Sunzi, the whole idea is that, like, if you are a general and there's some fight that your state wants to pick with someone else, or so then if you're the big planner, you have to take a lot of things into consideration. But just know that these choices have consequences. Not only even if you're going to be successful or whatever, just know that prolonging your campaign will not only drain you, it can also affect the everyday person back in your home country, right? So they got to be thinking of all these different things, like the money aspect, but also the time aspect, right? And so, like how it says in the one of the last lines, a general who truly understands warfare controls the people's fate. So just think. Let me see, what word does he use? People's fate. Yeah. The people, the mean. Um, so their fate and their lives, like their livelihood. So if you so ultimately you don't want to wage war, but if you must, you got to think about uh, the time, because the longer the time, the more money. The You're gonna have to try to be try to be resourceful, but then you're gonna have to be even more resourceful if the time continues to drag on. And so um, just take all these things into consideration, because ultimately your country will suffer, right? If these things take too long. All right. So, according to the translator of this book, he kind of gives an example where it was the Carthaginians against the Romans, the Roman Empire. So you had the Carthaginian leader Hannibal. He was able to really do damage to the Roman Empire, and he was able to ultimately fight his way close to Rome, but the Romans held him off, and they were at a standstill for years, right? So, unfortunately for Hannibal, then the Romans, they decided, well, why don't we, in order to kind of get the ball rolling, because this is just like this prolonged kind of stalemate is just draining everybody, right? So the Romans ended up bypassing Hannibal and then going directly to Carthage to just blitz them, and then that basically had to recall Hannibal back. And but the so then this whole scenario made it so that Hannibal was not as strong as he could have been, and with basically speedy, quick thinking, Rome was able to um, beat down someone who had just given them trouble for the longest time. He was very successful against Roman troops, but again, he was outthought by the Roman Empire, right? Um, so later on, basically, well, you can probably look up that history, but that was kind of one of the ideas where if something, ideally, something shouldn't be so protracted, but when it is, if you find the answer, so like the Romans made the strategy to quickly attack Carthage, and then that disrupted and weakened Hannibal. So they ultimately they turned the tides so that they could then ultimately defeat Hannibal. And so they hunted him down eventually. So I believe he killed himself before the Romans could. capture him, but that was the thing. It's like they relentlessly hunted him down. But at least the author gives that example where it's like prolonged stuff. But I think we have a lot of modern cases where you'll see so especially from my country, the United States, we get ourselves trapped in a lot of long-term battles. So what we just what end or we officially ended with the Iraq War, and also we pulled out of Afghanistan, and then back in the 70s we pulled out of Vietnam and stuff. All these protracted things ended up. I think you can see a bigger example also too with like say Vietnam, where you have mass protests and stuff, where people are trying to get the government to get out of say Vietnam and stuff. So uh, you'll see how it kind of wears down the home populace, and they just get sick of like these prolonged things, and it takes resources away from say like the was it the Army Corps of Engineers. So even our engineers say that we have to spend money on maintenance of our infrastructure and stuff like that, but a lot of it will get sent to like Sunzi put the glue and the lacquer for the chariots and stuff. So all the swords and all that, they cost stuff, they cost money, and that's money that the people back at home either they'll have to be taxed, or how Sunzi says that they have to pay tolls, right? So um, then they're unhappy. So you'll see how it's like how you'll see it throughout history how prolonged battles ultimately wear thin like your resources, and so it's not the ideal way to wage war, right? So think about that. Hopefully, it gives you a lot to consider. Feel free to ask any questions. We'll probably talk about chapter 3 next week. But in the meantime, I think One Championship is going to be having a an event where they're going to have like several matches where they're going to have Xiong Nan, so the woman from China who she's a champion in I think at least one division in women's MMA. She she didn't do Sanda, but she did Western boxing and weightlifting back in China in the sports universities. So it just the work ethic and stuff there kind of I think really contributes to her toughness. I think she probably lives in Singapore now, and she's probably training at Evolve, like their big gym over there. But at least she's going to be fighting. We'll probably try to talk about that. I probably should have talked about Zhang Wei Li. She just won again, right? They're saying that she really dominated. It's just the only thing that's because Zhang Wei Li fights in UFC. It's they're very strict on posting like pics or even short clips and stuff of the fights. So I really don't try to cover that. So I really don't try to cover UFC too much. But usually One Championship is much more lenient. So there should be some good matches coming up, and especially some. What's cool is like they do a lot of kickboxing matches, which I think is one of the styles that really complement Sanda, even a little bit more than Muay Thai. So I think the upcoming event for One Championship will be something we'll try to cover. But in the meantime, we'll just continue going over each chapter of Art of War, and hopefully you can learn something, or hopefully it gives you some inspiration or makes you think about stuff. And if you ever want to like comment or give any questions, or if there's any suggestion about something you'd want to hear about with regards to kung fu philosophy, or even the ancient Chinese writing and stuff like that, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. So just let me know. All right. So hope to see you next time. Thank you.